Hello and welcome to this very special look at one of the key buses in the Southern Counties Omnibus Collection. In this episode I will be looking at JKM165V, a 1980 Leyland Leopard, also known as Leo, and is probably one of the better known vehicles in our collection. JKM165V was new in July 1980. And was one of a batch of 3 vehicles for Maidstone and District. These would be registered JKM164 to 166V and were given the fleet numbers 4164 to 4166. The 3 coaches were built with the chassis designation of PSU 5C/4R and were fitted with 53-seat duple dominant coachwork. These coaches were built to the length of 12 metres as well, and were all delivered in National Bus Company Wight. Now, interestingly, they should have been registered GKL164V to GKL166V. However, this was changed to JKM instead. Both 4164 and 4165 were based at Silverhill Garage in Hastings. In May 1983, the 2 coaches were transferred to the Hastings and District Transport Limited fleet when that company was formed from the division of the Maidstone and District Motor Services fleet. They were both given the new fleet number of 164 and 165, JKM 165V becoming 165, strangely enough. In April 1985, JKM 165V was repainted, and this consisted of a white body but with a blue skirt and maroon stripping with the Hastings and District fleet names on the side. The following month she was to gain the registration of MWV 840. Now, Hastings and District were very keen on re-registering all their coaches, so this wasn't unusual at the time. In October 1986, 165 was given a bit of a facelift inside, with all the seats being recovered in a new, more modern maquette. Now, originally when she was delivered with alternative red and blue seats, as were a lot of duple-bodied National Express coaches at that time. However, when she was retrimmed, it was with a brown stripy maquette that she wears today. In February 1987, 165 was repainted into the well-known Hastings coaches livery of the blue, yellow and cream colours, the bases of which she wears today. During her time with Hastings and District, she worked everything from continental tours through to the Tesco free bus service. Although as far as I know, she was never fitted for one-man operation, so didn't do any stage or service work. With the 12-metre length and the one-piece door, she was definitely more of a coach than a grant coach. Now, the grant coaches were coaches that had been bought with the bus grant and tended to have split double doors at the front. And one of the conditions of the bus grant purchase was that they had to be used on at least 50% of stage carriage work. However, as I said, Leo isn't fitted like that. Hastings and District was purchased by the Stagecoach Group in 1989. Stagecoach already had Southdown at the time, and JKM 165V was renumbered 1165 into the Southdown series. But apart from this, life carried on pretty normally for JKM 165V at Hastings until May 1991, when she was withdrawn and then bought by Merton Pisces Swimming Club. They are based in southwest London, and namely in the Merton, Sutton and surrounding areas. Whilst with the swimming club, she was painted in an attractive green and white livery. She also lost a couple of her seats inside, becoming a 47-seater, and had a couple of tables fitted in their place. She continued in her role with Merton Pisces until April 2008, where she was sold to my friend Neil Morgan of Sussex for preservation. Between 2008 and 2010, Neil gave JKM165V a major amount of attention. The mechanics and the electrical systems were all overhauled, and Neil got her resprayed into the Hastings coach's livery, although initially he showed her in the Merton Pisces green and white colours. And I actually remember seeing her at Herne Bay Bus Rally in, I think it must have been 2008, in the Merton Pisces colours. Little did I know, little did I know that she would eventually end up in my ownership. During Neil's ownership, not only did she attend Herne Bay, but she also went to Cobham and Showbus. However, Neil was a very busy man and had a lot of other projects on the go as well, as we all do, don't we, to be fair. And he parked JKM165V up in her barn in deepest, darkest Sussex and left her there whilst he worked on these other projects. In early 2021, I had a message from Neil saying, would I be interested in buying 165? And after thinking about it for probably 30 seconds or something like that, I said yes. Saturday the 10th of April 2021 would see Paul and myself journey down to Sussex, where we met up with Neil at his workplace. We then followed him across to where 165 was stored. And when I say it was in deepest, darkest Sussex, I genuinely mean that. I still haven't a clue exactly where it is, and I pride myself on having fairly good navigational skills, having been a coach driver for many years. But hiding in the barn, covered in brambles and thick dust and a little bit of mould, was Leo the Leopard. And even sometimes when you look at a vehicle in that condition, you look at it and you can see the potential, and you can see underneath all that it's a very good and very solid vehicle, and it's had a lot of money spent on it in the past. And this was the condition that 165 was in. Despite her appearances, you could see that she was a very good bus. So a deal was done and hands were shaken. But as I always say on this YouTube channel, buying the bus is the easy part. Finding somewhere to put it and also the time to look after it is the harder part. Fortunately, Neil had paid the rent for the next few months at the barn where Leo was currently living, which gave us a little bit of breathing space. Now, fortunately, I'd just taken on a barn in West Kent, which meant that I had accommodation in Kent suitable for Leo. However, that accommodation was about 80 miles away. And at this point, we wasn't sure whether Leo would be able to drive it legally or would have to be towed. As the coach had been off the road for some time, a complete recommissioning exercise would have to be undertaken to make sure everything was safe and secure and worked as it should do. And with Leo being so far away from our base, it's not like we could just pop round the corner to grab some tools if we needed them. We had to have a proper game strategy to make everything work properly. Coupled with all this fitting into my work pattern, and you could see that there wasn't actually as big a window as you might have thought. Operation Leyland Leopard was about to commence. Sunday the 2nd of May 2021 saw Paul and myself returning to the remote outpost in Sussex, this time armed with tools and batteries, to see if we could coax 165 back to life. As you can see, she fired up first time and did us proud. There were no leaks and no dramas, and everything appeared to be working as it should be. Although checks highlighted a tyre that certainly needed changing, and a few bulbs needed changing as well. An inspection underneath showed that there was no fluids or oil leaking, and all the gears worked as well as the brakes. Paul and myself left the farm that evening reasonably confident that she would be able to be driven back legally and safely once the tyre was changed. Now, at the same time that all this was going on, Paul and myself were trying to deal with the rescue and repatriation of Leyland Titan T1080 from nearby Maidstone Airport in Kent. So we really did have our hands full, and we were unable to get down to see Leo the Leopard again until Sunday the 13th of June, which was also the time that the rent had expired on the barn where she was living. We loaded up Paul's car, again with batteries, tools, and this time we also squeezed in a spare tyre, as this would be the day that Leo would finally flee the nest and head back to Kent. The previous week I'd added her onto my insurance and arranged breakdown cover for her just in case. But as I changed the classification, the logbook was still in the post. That never turned up until the Saturday morning, and that was actually quite a hairy moment the day before, trying to tax her as a historic vehicle. To have all your hopes and plans in the hands of Royal Mail is quite a daunting business, to be fair. After changing the wheel and giving Leo a quick test run to make sure everything was still functioning correctly, we decided to make a break for it and head Leo back towards Kent. Now, one thing I should say is that we did put fresh fuel in, and we did put the diesel bug treatment in as well. So there was no sign of diesel contamination or anything like that a lot of vehicles that are laid up for a period of time do suffer from. As Leo edged out onto the open road, though, one thing that did become apparent that hadn't been apparent before was that there was no third gear. Faced with a long journey back, we decided to drive her back in this condition rather than try and effect a repair at the side of the road and maybe make things worse. And in the worst case scenario, we had the breakdown cover, didn't we? We left the farm at 2:30, and after a slow, very slow drive back, including several stops on the way to check that all was still performing well and nothing had sprung a leak or was getting too hot, we arrived at the West Kent base at about 6:30, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief, including Leo. Although still based at an outstation 40 miles away from our main garage, she was a lot closer and could be worked on, and indeed driven over to our main garage, if required. Here at the West Kent base, she joined my Bristol VR PKE 809M, Perky, who now resides with her at the Military Museum on the Isle of Wight. Both these former Maidstone and District buses were later joined by another former Maidstone and District bus, Bristol VR WKO137S. A little investigation to the gearbox revealed that an air pipe had fractured underneath, which was why there was no third gear. With this repaired, a test drive was undertaken and Leo performed absolutely spot on. All the gears worked as they should do, everything worked, she was a real treat. After a little bit more mechanical and cosmetic work was done on Leo, she attended her first show on the 3rd of August 2021, when she attended the Weald of Kent show at nearby Ashford. And after the journey and everything else, I can assure you that was a bit of a proud bus dad moment. She also made the journey every so often over to my place of work at Whitstable in Kent, which was, fair to say, was about 30 miles away from where she was based. So that would give her a 60-mile round trip. Again, she was performing well, and when she was over there at work, I used their bus wash to keep her nice and clean and get all the years of grime and mould off of the roof. I think it's safe to say that she came up about 3 tons lighter after all that was washed off the roof. On a couple of occasions, she was driven by Melissa, who absolutely loves her. Friday the 3rd of June would see her attending the Minster in Thanet show. Now, with her still being a little bit of a tried and untested vehicle, I wasn't really wanting her to go into the running days and running miles and miles and miles all the time sort of show. And these ones where she did a 30-40 mile drive, parked up for the day and then did a 30-40 mile drive back were the best option at the moment. Where she'd had several wheels changed and the rather nasty aluminium wheel trims removed, her wheels were very scruffy, so Melissa painted her wheels all in the blue livery, whilst I went about uncovering the destination blind, because as most bus experts know, once you get the destination equipment working and presentable in a bus, the restoration is pretty much over and done with and complete, isn't it? Again, she attended her second show with no problem, and the only issue was that we found an ice cream van which was identical colours to Leo, which was a little bit embarrassing. Although, to be fair, we didn't get anybody coming to the window asking for a whippy. Sadly, this would be Leo's last show in Kent. Now there seemed to be a little bit of a pattern forming here, because she was parked in her barn, and the following month Melissa and myself moved to the Isle of Wight, leaving all the buses behind in Kent for the time being. Now that might sound a bit strange, but they were undercover and they were safe, so I wasn't too worried about it. Now, one thing you don't always think about when you own a coach is that the accommodation sometimes is not fitting for the size of the vehicle. Leo is 12 metres long and is considerably longer than all of my other buses, which are Bristol VRs, at 9 metres long. It's actually easier to find accommodation for a 9 metres long double-decker bus than it is for a 12 metre long single-decker coach. The example being that Leo didn't fit completely in the barn at West Kent and had about 3 metres of her bum poking out. I sheeted it over a couple of times, and when we moved to the Isle of Wight, Paul came up, checked it and re-sheeted it as well to protect it from the worst of the weather. So there she sat like a stick of rock poking out of the barn. In February 2023, we found a space for Leo on the Isle of Wight at the Isle of Wight Military and Heritage Museum at Northwood near Cowes. Now, it was an outside space, which is less than ideal, but it was still a space, and it meant that Leo would be living with us here on the island. And on the 1st of March 2023, Paul and myself journeyed over to the West Kent depot, where Leo lay again in slumber, to give her a recommissioning check yet again, so she'd be ready for the long journey down to Portsmouth and then across on the ferry to the Isle of Wight. Now, I already have a video here on sunny YouTube detailing that journey, so I won't go into too many details about it. I will just try and remember to put a link up in the top right hand corner by my channel icon, so you can watch that at your leisure if you so desire. But it's a bit of a spoiler alert, because those of you who follow this regularly and have seen videos of Leo driving around the Isle of Wight, or have seen pictures of Leo online on the Isle of Wight, will know already that she made it with no dramas. Whilst Leo hasn't attended that many shows here on the Isle of Wight, she does get out quite a lot to stretch her legs. In the summer months, Leo can normally be found at places like Yarmouth, Allen Bay or Ryde, where we just jump in her and take her out for a spin. She has taken us over to Ryde to see the Rider Bus and the Wight Rider Bus event a couple of times as well. Although she wasn't an official entry, she was actually there in the background, parked at the coach park at Ryde Esplanade. In January 2024, she was joined by PKE 809M, the Bristol VR that used to live with her in her West Kent outstation, and they now reside at the Isle of Wight outstation. In August 2024, 165 attended her first official show here on the island when she visited the Garlic Festival near Newchurch. And although this was a weekend show, unfortunately we were only able to attend on the one day, which was the Sunday, but we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves there, and without a doubt both Leo and Perky the Bristol VR will hopefully be there this year, which for those of you watching in catch-up is 2025. At the time of making this video, there are a few jobs left to do on Leo, and this includes replacing the destination blind glass rubber and most of the rubbers on the skylights, as some of them leak. Being in Leo in heavy rain is a bit like one of those dodgy 1950s submarine movies where the submarine goes down too deep and water starts dripping in all sorts of weird and wonderful locations. I've managed to waterproof the rear emergency exit, and that's solved a few issues, and I've replaced the window rubber around the rear illuminated sign and addressed that. Again, there's a YouTube video here on that, so I won't go into too many details. I don't want to keep repeating myself. And with this sign all newly re-rubbered, the boot is now watertight, so I don't have a pond in the back of the coach, which is a good thing. Whilst here on the island, she had another tyre replaced, which unfortunately relegated one of the newly painted wheels to an inside rear wheel, so she's now gained a rather unmatching grey offside rear wheel. This is another job that will hopefully be sorted out, getting this painted. But she does have that wonderful in-service look about her. She's now also fitted with a working destination blind, and this is an East Kent Coaches one, so it's kind of authentic and it looks the part. Unfortunately, there's no Isle of Wight destinations on there, so I can't display anything local. But it's still fun driving round the island, confusing the locals with destinations like Rye, Hastings and Folkestone, and Ramsgate Hoverport up on the front. I do hope you enjoyed this look at JKM165V and 1980 Leyland Leopard with duple dominant coachwork. And I hope you can tell by the video and the pictures that there's a lot of love out there for this coach, and she's a very much loved member of the collection. If you did enjoy this video, please like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the little notification bell so you don't miss the future releases in this and my other series here on my channel on YouTube. By you watching this video, you're helping to raise money to keep buses like Leo the Leopard here in their retirement. And to be honest, that makes you a very good egg. And good eggs like yourself tend to have good taste, which will mean that you may well find something else on my channel that will appeal to this good taste. Thank you all so very much for watching. Bye for now.